Professor Mutugi is the Commissioner with the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights. Her focus is on ethics and advancements in science for the promotion and protection of human rights. That sounds just up my alley. I love it when the word ethics and science and justice are together, because they are so interlinked and we must never forget that. And you were also awarded the EBS, which is the, I've written the acronym and I've now forgotten the acronym. Tell me what the acronym is. There we go. Amazing. In recognition of your service to the nation by the President. And I love your motto, what's worth doing is worth doing well. And it's a great honor to have you here today. I met Marion through Professor Lisa Smith, who you recently saw on one of our presentations. And we immediately connected. And in fact, Professor Mutugi is probably one of the most connected ladies in Kenya, because everybody goes, have you invited this? Have you mentioned, do you know? And it's a great honor to have you. I think the work that you do is so important. We really look forward to your presentation today, and thank you for honoring us with your time. And also recently, Professor Mutugi has just published a book, and it's outside there. So please do go ahead and look at it and support her, because it's about bioethics of medical advances and genetic manipulation, legal, philosophical and moral perspectives. And you can see it was obviously a huge work that you put into this. And thank you for being here today and sharing some of your perspectives. And we hope to hear more about why DNA databases are important and advance justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stand here. That's what we are going to talk about. Human rights are inherent to each one of us. They are inalienable, they are indivisible, they are interdependent, and they are interrelated. And the Universal Declaration of Human Rights facilitates the enjoyment of our civic and political rights, which we are very familiar with, but even more important, our socio-economic and cultural rights. The provisions of human rights in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights for this particular purpose is Article 3, that gives you the right to life, liberty, and security. And the Constitution of Kenya gives you all, states all those rights: security, privacy, information related to family and private affairs, and correction and deletion of untrue or misleading information. I've just chosen those for our purposes. And for other countries, you can look at your constitution. I'm sure there. Oops, what happened there? Okay. The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights is an independent commission, and it is part of the National UN High Commission for Human Rights infrastructure, and our mandate is simply to promote and to protect human rights. Okay. Some of the work that the Commission has done in reference to what we are talking about, you can see it on our website. We have, in view of security, is guarding the coast, mending the rift, and the last one, silhouettes of brutality, which is on sexual violence that is related to elections. The East African community has a long history, started in 1948, and we have put in all kinds of things of what has happened and the road we have taken to where we are right now, where we are a regional bloc of 5 countries. And member states, 7 member states have about 300 million people. Oh, yeah, okay. Fancy things. The aims of the East African community are many, but I want to highlight that it's involved with defense, security, legal and judicial affairs, and science and technology. This is for purposes of what we are doing here today. And when we talk about transnational and serious crimes, these are crimes that involve more than one country in the planning, execution, and these include but are not limited to drug and weapon trafficking, human trafficking, money laundering, murder, sexual violence, terrorism, forced disappearance, human trafficking, etc., etc., etc. And East Africa has lots of porous borders. And so there is not one of these countries that can stand on their own in terms of crime, working with crime. And you can see all the borders there, the porous areas, and this is not all we have. There are legal frameworks that exist currently for dealing with serious and transnational crimes. For example, the United Nations Conventions, the protocols on drug trafficking, the protocol on peace and security. In the East African community, there is a regional peace and security strategy. There is a convention on illicit trafficking of narcotics. There is a protocol for prevention and control and reduction of small arms and light weapons. And in the treaty, Article 5, 123 and 124 deal with peace and security, and I quote that the community shall ensure the objectives of foreign and security policies by peaceful resolution of disputes and conflicts and so on. So that already exists in East African community. It further says that we can establish regional databases for cross-border crimes resolution. And of course, it provides for training and all kinds of security measures and security operations, early warning systems, and so on. It also provides for within the Security Council for interstate security and cooperation. And of course, it links into the international police, Interpol. The legal framework in the regional and national, I've given the example of Kenya. Now that we are in Kenya, of course, we have our judicial system all the way to the Supreme Court, and each of the countries, of course, have their own systems. But I want to highlight that within the region, there is an opportunity to have respective states, national criminal systems facilitate each of the transnational crimes, but we also have the East African Court of Justice, and it works. You remember the Ogiek case lately? Yes, it works. Then we come to data sharing, because if we are really going to utilize the East African community member states data, we will need to have protocols and frameworks for data sharing, and they are there. There is all kinds of cyber laws, migration, harmonization, ICT policy and harmonization framework, telecommunication. And I have just put this here, although you know it, and it has been said so many times, that, for example, in the UK, there is the UK National DNA Database, set up in 1995, and it is the largest database in the world. I'm not sure Professor Bruce would like to agree with me. And it has regulated by law, and it includes samples of persons who are arrested, as well as those who are convicted. And there is a court ruling, Mapper versus UK, that indicated that it is important to expurge profiles and so forth. And all those things happened there. And between 2001 and 2020, 730 plus matches of unresolved cases were noted. And the challenges of the UK DNA database is violation of the right to privacy and use of the database for genetic research without consent. And Professor Bruce talked about that, because really informed consent. The emphasis is not on consent, the emphasis is on informed. And also use of commercial companies, and Professor Bruce talked about it, and it's so nice to talk after a prominent professor. You just need to keep on quoting him. And then we have the DNA database in the USA, and he talked about the CODIS system. And there is a law that set it up. Initially, it was to track sexual offenders. It expanded to people convicted in federal offenses, but now it's wider and wider. And the challenges of that system is that some DNA profiles remain in the database even after acquittal or even serving of sentence, and it has an issue with infringing on the right to privacy. South Africa, correct me if I'm wrong, Vanessa, the National Forensic DNA Database, also anchored in law, mandatory DNA sampling to people who are convicted, and those arrested is provided for. Various crimes ranging from rape to murder to burglary. The profiles of persons who are acquitted are supposed to be deleted from the database within 3 years. However, one of the challenges is that this does not always happen. What are the challenges of trans-border crimes in East Africa? We have weak border security, porous borders, there's corruption. You know that you can cross the border even without a passport if you know the right person or you have enough money, limited resources, interagency cooperation, weak laws, absence of policies and regulation, and limited capacity for DNA profiling, establishment, and operationalizing of databases. That's why we are here. Now, there is a risk to violation of human rights in terms of security, also in terms of identity and confidentiality and personal data. So if we have a database without robust regulations, then we will stand the risk of violating people's rights to privacy. There are opportunities that are available for trans-border crimes in the EACC, development of legal policy and administrative frameworks. And somebody asked me the other day, do we set up the databases and then do the legal policy and regulations framework, or do we start with the law, regulations and policy, and then we do the database? I said it depends. If I'm a scientist, I also do the database first. If I'm a human rights person, commissioner, I will say do the laws first. So it is important to have this, and the regulations should include sharing of information, obligation to aid arrest, investigation, prosecutions, as well as utilizing this data, DNA technology in the criminal justice system. We, of course, increase convictions. It has happened elsewhere. Exonerate the innocent. There are people who are up in prisons and they keep on saying, I did not do it. I did not do it. And for example, we know projects that have happened elsewhere in the world, like the Innocence Project, has shown that actually some of those people incarcerated did not actually do it. And DNA has helped with that. Maintaining the database as a deterrent. If you know that there is Msemakweli is Msemakweli is the real truth. If you knew there was a system to establish the truth, maybe it could be a deterrent. Of course, there is opportunity to reunite families. The trauma of having your loved ones, you do not know whether they are dead or they are alive, also is important. And of course, identify missing persons and so forth. The DNA agenda is critical in the criminal justice system. It requires concerted effort of all actors in all of the countries in the East African community. It calls for mainstreaming capacity development in all these structures, and government chemists have helped, and there are all other players. Better coordination of intervention in the East African community organs and institutions, and this will allow us to have comparable entry, storage, retrieval, and destruction of DNA profiles, protocols, standard operating procedures, regulations, and policies. It will enable us to share data of suspected trans-border criminals, and it will result in transboundary crime resolution within the East African community. There is need for a centralized DNA database knowledge sharing and learning platforms across the members in the community. And once again, Professor Bruce gave us the example yesterday of how the various states in the US, the system is organized, rising all the way to the federal government. So that's really a model that we believe can work. Oh, there we go. This is the last slide. I'm doing well. Opportunities that are available for you to work with the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights or your country, your national human rights institution. One, at the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights, we consider access to justice a fundamental human right. And in sexual violence, for example, forced disappearances, human trafficking, security officers, brutality, we are committed to legislation, we are committed and have capacity and have programs for legislation, regulation, and policy development and review. We, in our compliance and reforms division, we look at international obligations, and some of the things we're talking about here, your country and my country has signed various international treaties. And one of the roles of the commission is to ensure compliance. We have an election hub. So we have early warning systems, and in Kenya, we have 6 weeks to go to the next election. Our election hub is up and going, so we can generally tell you what is happening around, and we pick these things, and we are able to work on them. For example, the 2008 post-election violence, the sexual violence around that, we were involved in the prosecution. We were amicus in a case that sexual violence victims have been awarded. They have won and they have been awarded. So we do this. And one of the most important things of working with the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights or your own human rights in your country is that if the commission has an A status like we do, A status means you're creme de la creme. You have a UNHCR audience, meaning that when your country that is obligated to give their report, yearly report on the status of human rights, the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights does its own independent report and presents it, and it is a good system. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely amazing. And I think that you really need to continue the conversation. There's such an opportunity with the East African community now entering into these treaties where data sharing is now becoming possible. So not only looking at your own countries with regards to DNA databases, but a further step to be able to share that information on databases because of the fact that there's so much movement of criminals, of perpetrators, of the missing migration, etc., through those borders. And that also brings to mind a humanitarian database is different to a criminal justice database. And we maybe also need to start looking at the two separately, because people are often afraid to come forward to put their profiles onto a database to find the missing or the dead if they feel it's going to be on a criminal justice database. So these conversations are so necessary, and thank you for bringing them to our attention. I just have to say that in South Africa, because I know you did mention it and you know that I do love my laws, that we have a DNA oversight board. And in terms of our retention framework, we've got 6 indices on our DNA database. And our arrestees or any profile that doesn't result in a conviction is removed within 3 years after the resolution of that case. That could take 10 years, but from the resolution of the case. And I served as deputy chair on the DNA oversight board after the implementation of the Act. And actually, the forensic science laboratory who was in charge of the DNA database had to report to us and show us their expungements. And they were really good at doing that. And in fact, at one point, there were more expungements than there were entries because our funding stopped and our DNA profiling stopped, which has now been reinstated. So I am happy to say that a DNA oversight board is actually quite an important aspect of any country thinking about laws. If you are concerned about those sort of things, it's very easy, especially in the early days, to have an oversight structure that ensures that those retention frameworks are adhered to. So I hope that does answer your question.
Thank you.
So any questions for this amazing lady, Professor Mutugi? You have one there.
Good afternoon. I'm Betty. My question will be, how are you working with the NGOs and the CBOs just to create awareness more so in the marginalized communities, which have very strong taboos that are meant to break, especially now that we're heading to the election period?
Thank you very much. This is part of the cultural rights, socio-economic and cultural rights. We know and we recognize that various cultures, as long as they are not repugnant, are protected in the Universal Declaration. They are also protected by law. So we work with them and we work with the NGOs. The Kenya National Commission of Human Rights has a very lean structure because we work with the various civil society organizations. Without them, we cannot perform. They're the people on the ground. They're the ones who know the sensitivities. They're the ones who know the people. They're the ones who know the nuances. Thank you. I just want to say, to complete that, in terms of human rights, what we are talking here, we are talking about human rights of communities. Communities really have a right to security, and that is to be provided by the state. We are talking about the victim of sexual violence, of trafficking, of what. That person has a right to access to justice. We are talking about the people who are from tragedies, the dead. They have a right to identity and to honorable interment. And we are talking about a suspect who has a right to privacy. So you take my data and you have the right. I have a right to that data. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a present. Hang on. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.